what we'll do today is to talk about the value model validation. So what we have done so far is this. We have come to the point of here. We have talked about the startup calculus. We have talked about 3 parts of the calculus: user model, value model, business model. And we have talked about that these all 3 need to get defined first. But before you start building products, first you have to do validation in an objective manner. Last class talked about how you can do the user model validation. This time we'll talk about how you can do the value model validation, right? And I think in that context, we'll talk about what products to build and how you want to go about doing it. Right? Just to do a quick recap, so value model is essentially, option or choice that you have as a startup to figure out how you want to create value for your customers, right? And there are 3 ways in you can do that. One on the top is the performance, which is the output oriented. So you want to worry about how you can give more better performance, better quality of service, better experience to your customers. And on the bottom 2 are the cost and effort. These are on the input side, right? So you can either make it more convenient for you, your customers, your users to use your product, which is the effort, or you can reduce the price or the cost, total cost of ownership for your customers, which is basically access-less strategy, which is typically what you would have heard or read about in the disruptive innovation theory. So that is a subset of this. What we have talked about is other ways in which you can create value. And we talked about how companies go about doing it. As an example, for urban company, use a performance-led strategy to offer more value to users, offer more value to users in comparison to the competitors, which were Just Dial and Yellow Pages at that time. And likewise, Yellow Pages, Just Dial had done the same thing when they competed against Yellow Pages by offer lower effort, which is more convenience to the users, right? So that's basically what you want to do. The reason there are only 3 and not more, right, is because it depends on this equation, that is value is equal to output by input, and output is what your customers derive from your products that you build, right? So it's the benefits derived by your customers, and input is what efforts they put in to use your products, right? So that's basically, because of that, basically there are only those many possibilities that you have, right? Like I have mentioned before, you can make performance and split that into multiple parts if you want to. You can add experience as a separate component to that. If so, then you can add more variables to that, but basically it's output by input, right? In a lot of cases, the effort required to use the product gets, you come to a point where it doesn't matter any longer. In those cases, price becomes the more important parameter on the input side. So you have to look at that, because I think after a certain point, you can't really reduce effort too much. And if so, then you have only 2 levers that you can play with, which is more benefits to your customers or less price that you can charge them. Right? So those are the distinct ways in which you can create value for your customers. Right? So therefore, question becomes, actually, to arrive at this, you would have done user research. You have observed them in the field, so you know reasonably well what is going to work, right? But eventually, you do need to validate that, right? And then the question becomes, why do you need to validate that? So here's an example of a company, Get Active Physio. What it does is basically it allows, when you actually let's say have a fracture or you sprain your ankle, you would go to a doctor, and doctor would do some, let's say put a plaster, and you recover in, let's say, 6 weeks. After that, typically you have to do physio. You have to actually make sure that the movement comes back to the fractured part. Right? For that, you have a physio. So that's one scenario. There could be many other scenarios also. For that, typically you have to go to the hospital or to a clinic where you have to do this physio activities repeatedly. So this company, Get Active Physio, said that why should that be the case? Why should it not be that the doctor can prescribe one app to you, and you sit at home and you basically use this app, which typically on your phone now you have cameras. So you set your phone in front of you, it can see what you're doing, right? And it can basically, I don't have it yet, it's here. Right, so let's say you're doing some exercise like that. So the camera can actually look at that and tell whether you're doing the exercise the way it was meant to be or not, right? And it can guide you to do it properly, right? So that's the kind of service you can say that you can do at home, right? So when this company, Get Active Physio, spoke to the doctors and to the physiotherapists, they all were very excited, right? And the reason for the excitement was that typically once you go to a doctor and you get the physio started, there's a steep drop of rate, right? Most people do not continue with their physio exercises. 75% or so people stop. They don't follow exactly what they. 75% of people don't come back to the location to do it again, right? A lot of people switch over to someone to come home and help them do it. But one or another, the adherence rate is fairly low. So this is what people thought, that if we can actually do this, we can actually make life better. It will be good for both the customers and for doctors. And the reason actually it makes sense is because, and I think it's true for all doctors in India, but this is also true for physiotherapy, the number of doctors or physiotherapists that we have in India is very, very low, right? So we have a huge deficit of physiotherapists in India, and therefore, if we can actually help increase the full adherence to the protocol, then I think as a patient you will be better off. And in the process, if the physiotherapist makes some money, because this need not be a free service, this could be a paid service. People can, instead of you're paying, let's say 100 rupees or 150 rupees or 1000 rupees per session, they can charge 200 rupees per session. So it can be low cost, more convenient. Everything seems to make sense. Doctors very, very keen, so they went ahead and built the product, right? And it was actually, so they tried to measure its adherence to protocol. They were able to do a fairly good job of it. And yet the company failed, right? And I would ask you, can you guess why the company failed? So just to recap, the product was built with the help of some doctors. They were early adopters, they were co-creators. There were some people who were, a doctor who was HOSMAT doctor, who had set up his own setup, was very much on board. In fact, he joined the company as an advisor. So it was not built in vacuum, right? The product was validated to make sure it was actually doing exactly what the doctors wanted to, right? So it was doing what it was expected to do. But when they rolled it out to other doctors, it did not get any adoption. Can you guess why? Can you think why that would be that? No? Okay, so the reason was that what doctors felt that this might eat into their own revenue stream, right? So this can actually be so there's a revenue stream that they're generating, and it can, if they switch over to this, the doctors feared that they might not come back for the next, case. Let's say you don't have a fracture next time, you just have a sprain, right? They feared that people might just go to this app and find the right recommendation from the app, which app had the capability, and they thought that in the long run they will actually not be able to make money, right? So it was a channel conflict. You already have a revenue stream, you are starting a new revenue stream, but this new revenue stream can eat into your old revenue stream, and that is your main revenue stream, and there's a worry that eventually you'll make less money. Whether it's logical or not logical doesn't matter at some point, because it's what your customers think is the what might happen to them, right? So that's the reason this company actually, after 3 years of effort and raising some friends and family money, they had to shut down, right? So it's a necessity for everyone to do a value model validation, right? So the question is, so how should we do it, right? And we did the same thing in last class also, which is that you have to do user model validation. User model validation was, you have to identify, once you have a product and which you have visualized based on your conversation with your potential customers. So basically it is based on user research. You still have to go back to the market with one product, an early version of product, right, which I had called MUP, minimum unbundled product, and see if there is willingness to adopt that product. At that point, there was only to check the willingness to adopt the product. In this case, we have to do a little bit more, right? We are still trying to remove the subjectivity, right? We're still trying to remove the say-do gap that your customers might, create with you, right? They might say something that they eventually might not do what they really said, right? To do that, what you need to do is three things, right? You have to first work with early adopter users, early adopter customers. Number two, the MUP that was built for user model validation might need to get extended a little bit to offer tangible and measurable value to your customers. So it's a promise that you have to make, right? And third is what I call you have to establish PUF, right? Which is product unbundling fit. Right? And the way you do that is to make sure that you're able to deliver value in a consistent and ongoing manner to your customers. So where Get Active Physio failed was in the last step. They were able to get co-creators, they were able to deliver value to them, but where they failed was in the last step, was they were not able to deliver value in a consistent and ongoing manner. Because at some point the fear kicked in that this product might take over my business or it might eat into my revenue streams. Right? So that's basically what the three-step process is. And again, the reason I'm calling it PUF is to emphasize that it is not the same as PMF, which is product market fit, which you would have heard about many times, right? Product market fit, the word market in the market word there implies a business model validation, right? So what we don't want to do at this stage is to not worry about revenue, and we don't want to validate the business model. And I'll tell you why that is the case. Okay, so I have used these terms without defining them very well. I have defined them in a hand-wavy way. So here's how it gets defined in a more structured way. So if you go look this up, there's a very well-known book by Jeffrey Moore, which is called Crossing the Chasm, right? And the way it is defined in that is the book targets how new technology gets adopted in the market. Any new technology, how does it get adopted in the market? It's a marketing-oriented book. It's not a product-building book. It's not a startup book. It's a marketing book, right? But it's been applied to startup world, as in the case of a lot of our frameworks in startup world actually have been force-fitted into startups, but this is how it works. So the way they did research and they found was that if you look at all your customers out there, they typically fall under bell curve. Right? The first 16%, that yellow and the red one, together are one chunk, which are typically the customers who are eager to adopt a new product. A subset of that, the innovators, what we call co-creators in last class, are the people who are already doing something that you want to do. They're hacking together a solution that you think you want to build in a more generic and a more scalable way. Right? Those are the people, innovators and co-creators. Next comes the early adopters, which is what we want to focus now. After you have served enough of them, then you're ready to start building start validating the business side of your product or business side of your startup. So in the first two steps, you're doing user model validation, then you're doing a value model validation, right? So that's how basically, yeah. Yeah. No, it's not a timeline-based thing. It's more of okay, so I think, so to repeat the question, are there any timelines attached with the user model validation, value model validation, and then business model validation? No, answer is not. There's no timeline per se. It is what we are trying to get rid of is the qualitative aspect of doing startups, right? We are making it quantitative. So the quantitativeness of this should decide how long it takes. So let's say example that we used last time, Dropbox, put out a video of file sharing across different platforms from iOS to, let's say, from your laptop to your phone, right? That video itself got a lot of positive feedback, right? So within that, I would say a day or a week, they knew that there is a market need for it. There's a user need for it. So they immediately switched over the next part, which is to start building a product. So this is pre-product. They just built a video and then put it out to see if there's a market readiness for it. Once they got the market readiness, they started building the product. Right? Then they launched the product, which is the early version of the file sharing system that they had. That again, once it started getting adoption, they knew there was a user value model validation happened. So there is no timeline. It can take years doing this. So yes, just validating your value model can take years. It's not a matter of days or weeks or months even for most companies. Most startups actually end up taking much longer. This is the tough part, right? And like I said, Get Active Physio did it for 3 years, and they eventually realized that actually there's no market for this. There's no consistent way in which they can deliver value to their customers. So they had to fold it, right? But it's actually better to pivot at this stage than to pivot later at the business model validation stage, because you still have invested relatively less time and money into the startup. All right, so let's look at this little bit more, right? So what really does it mean, these terms, innovator, early adopter, early majority, and so on and so forth. Here's an example, it's from this Brains magazine. It's in the context of Web3, which is now not that hot. It was fairly hot 2 years back. So the innovators are people who really get excited by a new technology, right? In fact, it is not just saying, hey, there's a new technology called Web3. They might actually be starting to do the Bitcoin trading. They might already be figuring out with the blockchain, right? They might already be doing some hands-on work with that. So that's your innovator or your co-creator who's already doing something on his or her own to solve the problem that you want to solve. The early adopters are people who are looking for new things. They are waiting for something new to come in because they have perceived the pain point. But they don't have the ability to build the product. But because they're aware of the pain point, if you go to them saying, oh, here's a product that I have, they will say, oh, great, I've been looking for it. I'm very happy to start using it. Right? And after that is where the chasm comes. And the reason a lot of companies fail there is there's a pull from the market in the first 2 steps, because these customers already know what the problem is. They're already doing something to solve for it. The early majority, on the other hand, is not looking for the problem, for a solution, right? But they're open to it. They have the ability to adopt a new product if you can explain the value of your product to them, right? Which is where it says there, interesting, I must study this new product, in this case Web3, right? After that comes late majority, and then the laggards, and you can see that, that's not the space where the startups succeed, or, in fact, they die if you end up targeting your customers who are there. You're not going to succeed. Right? So it's very, very important for us to pick initial customers and only focus on them. And your numbers, metrics, everything should only be targeted towards them. Somehow you should need to exclude people who are coming from here. Right? And this is where the risk of going by references comes in. So if you say a friend of mine is a potential customer of this product, right? Or someone who got connected to me because through my warm connect is showing interest, you have to ask them yourself, are they in the innovative early adopter category or are in the other side of the curve, right? And then if they're on the other side of the curve, even if it's a warm connection, even if someone you know very well, you have to actually say, no, I'll come back to you, I'll not work with you, right? There's a second problem that happens, which is this, right? Which is what the Jeffrey Moore and other people don't cover, which is actually the startups, when they enter with a new innovative product, the market does not have a very nice, beautiful, bell curve. It is actually skewed towards the right. There are very, very few people actually who are innovators or early adopters. They're really not looking for it. When Vedantu launched its online tuition class, there were hardly any people who wanted online tuition class, right? So that's why everyone is sitting here saying, okay, let it prove itself. If they get lots of JEE top rankers, then next year we'll look at it. Right? And that's the case with a lot of products. You don't want to jump in too early. Right? Most people want to wait and see how it performs, and then if it's really consistently doing good, then you start looking at it. So that's the other problem innovative startups face, that most of your market is not ready for your product. So really the challenge is to find those yellow and the orange people and really focus on them and go after them. Right? So the question is, how does one do it, right? Because you can't do it post facto. You can't start working with them and then realize, oh, they are not really moving fast. So the way to do that is to look at these 2 parameters, right? The same input and output, we keep going back to the same things. So input and output. On the input side is their ability and willingness to adopt a new product, right? And on the output side is their ability or willingness to pay for the new product, right? So what you want to do is, oh, it's LED screen. Okay, what you want to do is to find users who have the high willingness to adopt and high willingness to pay. Actually, no. Willingness to pay lower and willingness to adopt higher, right? And again, the reason for this is that the early adopters and co-creators actually don't have high willingness to pay. And I'll tell you, towards the end why that is the case. So you want to first find these people who have high willingness to adopt, right? And after that, you want to find people who have high willingness to adopt and high willingness to pay. And you want to ignore the people on the left-hand side. And that's how. Comment I have made there is that in this calculation of when you're looking at your customer base, you have to also exclude customers who don't have the ability to adopt or ability to pay, right? So in Vedantu's case, the users who did not have high internet connectivity did not have the ability to adopt the product. So forget about the willingness and ability and willingness to pay. They did not have ability to adopt itself. So they got excluded altogether, right? And which is why the curve looks like this, right? So your ability to pay or ability to adopt is the one which skews the curve towards the right, right? And it's very important to understand and realize that in the beginning, most innovative startups face this challenge. And you have to work with this and you have to figure out who are your early adopters, early customers, right? Okay, this is fine? Okay, so second part. So we talked about MUP, which is minimum unbundled product last time. Now you need to go one step forward from there, which is MUP plus, right? What is this plus? Plus is the value promise, right? So what you need to do from the first time to the now, right? From innovators to early majority, early adopters, is basically make a promise, right? The reason you need to make a promise is innovators or co-creators already are aware of a problem, they're already solving it themselves. So you don't need to make any promise because they already have in their head a quantitative measure what they think is what will deliver value to them. To the early majority, to early adopters, you need to actually go and make a promise, right? And that's the promise that they will hold you against to see are you delivering value to them or not, right? So that's what you need to do, right? In all of this, very important thing is that you need to first and foremost solve the largest unknown issue in the big problem that you're trying to solve. So it is not correct to start building periphery of the product, saying, let's make this, let's see if people adopt it, then I'll actually build the real product. And that's a services-oriented thinking, right? You basically start generating some revenue, and then you say, using this money, I'll put it back and I'll build the real product later. Right? A product-first company does not think like that. A product-first company first identifies the problem, finds the largest potential to failure, what is the most difficult problem in that, and solves for that. Right? So that's a thumb rule that you must follow. Right? So what's value promise? So value promise is a quantifiable and measurable promise that you make to your customers. Right? It has two parts. So first, it must be measurable, and second, it must be verifiable by the users themselves. Right? So let me give you examples of this. So here's an example of a company that I worked with. It's a company called HomeLane. And HomeLane, people know HomeLane? Yeah, at least some people know. So HomeLane is an interior decoration company. So when you move into a house, new house or old house, and you want to redo or you want to do interiors or you want to redo interiors, you basically reach out to HomeLane. Right? These are basically your carpenters and other people who can design your, the kitchen and wardrobes and all that, and do it for you. So what HomeLane did was to experimented with different value promises. So here's for one of them, which says we have got 300 plus interior designers to perfect your kitchen. Right? So what they're saying is that, of course, we are a digital or tech first company. We have standardized all the processes. In addition, we have got some of the best designers to work and basically cater to your needs, right? And what they're saying is, typically when you work with an interior decorator, you kind of get restricted by the designer's creativity, right? And sometimes, your wavelength and the designer's wavelength doesn't match, then you are stuck basically. Right? But by saying this, they're saying, okay, you have lots of designers, you can talk to many, see who comes up with the best idea and go with that person's idea, right? So that's what here. Here's another thing they tried. We give you a 5-year warranty so that you have complete peace of mind, right? This is what is geared towards the fear in people's mind, saying if I get the interior done and the plywood or whatever they use is inferior quality, which you don't know once the laminate has been put under it, you really don't know what was, what plywood got put inside. So a few years down the road, the laminate will start chipping, or something wrong will happen, but by that time money is gone and there's no guarantee to it, right? Right. So what here they're saying is these are two most common issues that people face. We will answer to that. Neither of these two promises worked. Yes. But the issues start showing up in 5 years. So if, let's say, in kitchen, instead of using a waterproof plywood, they use normal plywood, it will start puffing up and the laminate will start going out of shape. Right? You will start seeing, or the wardrobe will start scratching each other. So yes, ideally you want it to last for 10-15 years, but at least things are going to fall apart. It's like buying a new car. Within 1 year, you know that it was actually, unfortunately, bad piece. Right? You're stuck, right? Or washing machine, all of these things, right? So what they're saying is, here are two common issues that people have. I will solve for it, right? But my question is, or observation is, that neither of these promises worked. Can you think why they didn't work? Sorry? No. No, see, the thing is, they are competing in an unorganized sector. In India, 80% of the interior work is done by, word of mouth referral. So someone got it done in the neighborhood, you are walking around, you say, oh, acha, isko bhej do. You start working with that person. So it's not the competition. It's then their product is only for premium. See, in India, the only product that works which is actually below mass premium, it's called. Just because India premium is very, very small. The real premium is very small, right? So most of the people are in this mass premium. They want high quality, but they can't pay too much also. They're willing to pay, but not too much, right? Actually, the reason is neither of these promises are verifiable by the user on their own immediately, right? We've got 300 interior designers. Are they good designers, not designers? I don't know. I mean, and are there really 300? I don't know, maybe they're 30. You just are saying 300. How do I verify? I'm not going to go and interview all 300, right? So that's one problem. On the right-hand side, I think roughly you talked about it, right? It is the duration of the promise. 5 years is too long. I don't know if 5 years down the road, will I have energy or the patience to go back and, ask Homeland saying, refund my money, right? So I think the problem is these promises are not measurable and verifiable by the user themselves. Right? These are promises which are correct promises, which are addressing the pain point that the customer has, but they are not verifiable. So what worked for them was this promise, right? Which is beautiful home interior in 45 days or we pay you rent. This is the third big problem that customers have. You get your work started, they say in 2 months it'll be done, 6 months later you're still fighting a battle. Right? No, in this, not just quick, it is the honoring your promise. You say that this interior work will get done in 2 months, but then it gets stretched by another 4 months. It is that mismatch of promises what causes the pain point. Because let's say you are staying in a rental house, you bought your own house, you want to move there. At some point, you have to give notice to your landlord saying, I will move out on March 1st, and your house is not ready. In fact, it doesn't get ready. Let's say it's not ready. So you go back to your landlord saying, sorry, it's not ready. Give me 1 more month or 2 more months. 2 more months later, you go back and again it's not ready, right? Now you're really stressing out saying, what do I tell to my landlord?
This is very common problem. All organizations are like that. They say 2 months, we have to reserve it for.
Exactly why they said that it's 45 days, or if not, we start paying your rent. Whatever rent you're paying today, I'll pay that. So this becomes a tangible and verifiable. In 45 days, you better deliver my product. If not, I will take care of your rent, right? That's what makes people saying, okay, these guys actually mean what they say, right? And if I can, of course, you can say whether they'll pay the rent or not in 45 days, it's still it's a question mark, right? You still have to trust a little bit, right? But it is at least shorter duration. And if they don't pay, eventually the word will get out that these guys are a scam, they never pay, and people get to know. So you basically, Homeland will not survive.
So we can give small orders for 45 days. Like we not go for the whole.
Now you're doing optimization top. You are an innovator, right? So you will give a small order to say if they actually do it and then give them. Yeah, I mean, people already do that. But I think they said, it's bottom line, you have to figure out, if you're building a new product, you have to find a value promise which is measurable, tangible, and independently verifiable. Right? That's what gets people to start trusting you. Right?
They have changed the meaning of measurement.
What do you mean by that?
Quality
Uh-huh.
and timelines. They change the value proposition. They change the meaning of measurement.
Yeah, no, I look at it slightly differently. So they have not changed see, this is what they tried first, because these are the top two. See, you are building product to solve some pain point gaps, right? And what you're trying to do is to find which of these is the most tangible and measurable and verifiable, right? And you want to anchor on that, because what it does is it gives that reassurance to your customer. What it also does is it gives you to understand what kind of product you need to build. So MUP plus, what you are adding or extending from a minimum unbundled product is the capabilities which allow you to do that, right? By promising this 45 days or we pay rent, what it forced Homeland to do was to ensure the processes that they have are streamlined. They cannot mess on 45 days, right? This is a promise they made, or else there's an actual monetary loss, right? So it changes the way you build your products. That's the most important part, right? So the product you build, MUP plus, depends on the promise you make.
They just change their positioning.
They change the positioning. Because of the change of positioning, the product changed, because the processes that they have, the number of redundancy they have in the carpenter side, the supply chain that they had to strengthen that, right? So it does. End product is still the same. They're still doing interiors, right? From that point of view, yes, the product is same, but how you deliver value, that gets changed, and that's the very important part, right? That's the important part that any startup has to think about. And this is what is done by everyone. It's not like this is Homeland, right? Swiggy in the beginning, they don't do it now, but when they started, they were inspired by Domino's, right? Domino's says 30 minutes or I don't know what they say, 30 minutes or free. I don't know if they say free, but Swiggy said 30 minutes or free, right? This is what you want to talk to your early adopter users, because they actually value that, right? People who have been ordering Domino's, they know that 30 minutes comes, then they are thinking, why can't other people do the same thing? And you're basically addressing their needs or their expectations. Over time, Swiggy actually changed it, because they increased the radius from which they could deliver food. So 30 minutes can't be done if you're sitting here, you're ordering food from, let's say, Brigade Road. It can't come in 30 minutes. So then that's where they changed it. But for the longest time, they actually did that. They changed it later to 25% off. They tried different variations, but it's a measurable promise, right? The promise need not be measurable in the sense of this. Here's the promise that WhatsApp made, right? Here's what the co-founder, Brian, wrote down, and they put it in front of to remind themselves, no ads, no games, no gimmicks, right? Which is what they honored forever. I mean, even today, there are no ads, there are no games, and well, you can say there are some gimmicks now, but at least the business accounts are, they have to make money. But they actually have honored this despite a lot of pushback from Facebook saying, you have become large, 2 billion users, let's monetize it. They pushed back. One of them quit also the company, quit Facebook, saying, no, we'll not do it. So these are the promises which people can also measure. And a lot of companies which are doing messaging at that time died because they started monetizing by adding these things, into their products. They don't disclose separately. So I don't know. Huh? I think their business accounts will be making them money. It's actually quite actually nice way if you can get rid of the spam. Instead of ads, the business account seems to be a good way of making money. I shall. No, but there are no ads there. Okay, they're giving, no, not Google. They'll not give it to Google. They'll give it to Facebook. Meta, right? I mean, that, family might be sharing actually. Likely sharing, I would say actually. So, yeah, if you are, I think that's what people say, right? If there's a free product, then you are the product, right? So they're mining you rather than anything else. But anyway, Google is Google's algorithms are reading your Gmails to put the right ads. No humans are reading the Gmails. Huh? Who knows? Okay. Unverifiable, exactly. Actually, if you remember, Google's initial promise was do no evil. Right? That's what they did to early adopters, right? Which got canned later, right? So they don't have that. So anyway, Vedantu, right? So sometimes these promises drive companies a lot, right? I mean, they are actually very, very useful. I would urge everyone to think about them. Because a lot of companies say, oh, we will build the best product or we'll build the cheapest product, but you don't quantify it, right? And I think that's what kind of hinders it, both for you because you're not pushing your product to become the best possible product, and also for your customers because they don't know what really to expect from it. So the Vedantu does that is by saying what they call VIP, Vedantu Improvement Promise. Right? They say if you take 75% of the classes, if you attend 75% of the classes, online classes, and you do 75% of the homeworks that gets assigned by the tutors, your grades will improve. If they don't improve, I'll give you money back. Right? So that's a VIP promise. So that's what I think I want to emphasize. The way you come up with your promise will be completely dependent on your own context. But you must think of a way to make a tangible, verifiable promise to your customers. Right? Okay, so let's look at this MUP and MUP plus, right? How does it, what does it really stand for? Right? Example is Uber. I think we talked about it when Uber started. They started with a product called Uber Plus or Uber Black. Uber Black was basically had high-end sedans and limousines, and it was targeted towards the people who are going for parties. And the idea was that, if you're going for a party, you want to, arrive in style, then you basically book a Uber Black, right? And it was actually targeted towards a very niche set of people that Uber knew that if they succeeded there, they will create word of mouth buzz and and everyone will get to know about it. Right? So that's what actually is the value of innovators and early adopters. They are typically also well connected in the communities and others listen to them because they are early adopters and others know they are early adopters. And you will normally ask that person saying, what do you think? Should I buy this product or not? And I'm sure everyone has people like that they know of. Either you then yourself are the people, that person, that others talk to you saying, what should I do? Or some people who you talk to saying, okay, I'm thinking of buying a new car. What do you think is what should I look at? Because that person has done all the research and has, for no obvious reasons to you, knows too many details, right? So those are your innovators, right? So which is exactly what Uber did. They said, let's go after these people who are wealthy, people who want to go for these parties, want to go in style, will offer a service to them. Right? So that's what they did. It got them the, the buzz that they wanted. Right? That was a strategy. It was well known to them. And once they did that, they launched the actual product, which is basically more affordable taxi service, right? Point-to-point, on-demand taxi service, right? Which is That's where they actually went after the dense areas in New York, in US, which is New York City and San Francisco City. So the downtown areas. So they offered UberX, and they said those commuters anywhere taking taxi, which is a yellow taxi or whatever they call it there, right? So let's make sure we can offer a better service to them. Yes.
Why not reverse?
Why not reverse? Because innovators typically are already looking for a solution. So they already are trying out different limousine services. So if you go to US, you will see Yellow Pages or any such way. There are many limousine services listed there, right? So there is a demand for that, and people are already looking for these to go for these parties, and also because if you are drunk, you don't want to drive back, so you want basically some. So you're already looking for something like this. So that's where I think it gets you the maximum, so to say, easiest way to get started. You're This is true for this segment also. Actually, you're right. Right. I think it's just their openness or their readiness to adopt a new product. Right. So I think the shades are a little blurred here. So I agree with you. It's not that black and white saying, okay, this guy was already trying something and this guy was not, because these guys are also taking the city cabs, right? Right. So, but I think that gives them more buzz. That gives them, creates the feel good for, right? So for the larger community, so that you kind of get boosted from that. So it could have been reverse. I mean, no, it would not have been reverse. But the lines are very, not very obvious here between the two sides.
Maybe sometimes it happens that if it's popular amongst normal users, then the privileged ones.
No. Typically that doesn't happen. Early innovators do not follow or even early adopters do not follow the masses. It actually kind of undercuts your, if there's a new product and you're the first to adopt a new product, but you find out someone else is already using a product, now you're thinking, saying, I'm not the cool person that I was, so I will not. So no, it doesn't reverse. The order normally doesn't reverse. Not to say you must always have something like a wealthy clientele or uber black to succeed, right? But yes.
This innovators and early adopters.
Yeah.
Is those something like an intrinsic thing, or is it situation dependent? Like I buy the latest iPhone, I buy the latest iPhone watch.
Right.
Or is it situation dependent that I'm drunk and now I have no other option, so I might be very good with this watch, but I take this service. Is it intrinsic or?
I think it's mostly intrinsic, which is why the ability and the willingness to adopt comes from. So it is a lot is dependent on your optimism towards new solutions, new products. So typically there are some people who have positive outlook towards how technology can help change the world for better, and there are a lot of people who sit on the fence, evaluating whether it actually help or not. And there are some people who are always skeptical about things, saying things are going bad. It's really not helping, right? We're getting screwed. So there's always that spread of people. Now for different technologies, that their outlook might be different. So it's not like that for everything they will behave similarly, right? So that can change, and of course then the situational things can aggravate or elevate the need for it. But I think there's an outlook aspect here. Yeah. All right.
While we are at this MVP stage, the product is not fully developed.
Correct.
Now, there will spread the word about the product.
Yes.
Basically, person who are going to try first. Now, if the product doesn't perform well, so can it turn to be a really stopping point for the companies? How careful we have to be?
Correct. Good point. So let's go back. So let's look back to WhatsApp, right? So at the early stage, the co-creator or innovator stage, the product they had was a phone book based status update product, right? So you can, as a user, say that I'm in a gym or I'm in a class, right? So that's why I'm not taking a call, right? So you basically that was really a spammy product, right? yet it worked, right? Because that user base was more than happy to adopt it, right? Then they come to the next point where Apple releases the push notifications, and they morph their product to say that here's a messaging product, right? So that's when I think, even at that stage, the product will have some it might not be robust, right? It might have certain issues that the late majority and laggards might, find issues with. But early adopters are happy to actually work with products which have occasional failures because they understand why it is failing. And they're happy to give feedback to you to say, this is how you should improve your product. So they get their kick out of giving feedback to the creator of the product saying, this is how you should be improving it. So no, you don't get pushback, or you don't get negative feedback from them if you are able to incorporate their feedback into the process that you have. So if you can use their feedback and make them feel valued in the process, that their input is helping you improve the product, they're actually more than happy to do that, right? Which is how it was true for, my next example is that actually Sigtuple, how they actually work with co-creators to actually build the product and then improved it. So it's true for almost all companies. You will find some set of users who are very happy to work with you, give you feedback. Then another set of people, which is your early adopters, who are willing to work with incomplete product with occasional failures. They don't complain. But the late majority is or early majority, late majority is where the complaints come, right? So the quality expectation increases as you go down. Yeah. Same for B2C, B2B. Yes, yes. Right. It's just a different set of people. All right. So, well, let's answer this question. What did UberX do? Was it performance led or was it effort led? Right. Effort led. Yeah. So I think it's actually, so if you look at the first one, they were clearly performance led, right? When they came here, now they have come to a point where saying, okay, I already can give reduce the effort, which is an app which you can book, so you don't have to go out in the street and hail a taxi. You can book it sitting in your office, and you know how long will it take for it to come. In the Bay Area, and this is my point here, in the Bay Area, they actually in New York City, they made a promise that the car will come to you in 5 minutes or less. If you book a cab, it'll come in 5 minutes or less, right? And they actually worked very, very hard to honor that, right? And that's basically what helped them to go. That you will call a performance. The effort part was saying that you can sit in your office or wherever you are, go to the street only when you know the cab is arriving, right? So that's how you're reducing the effort that people have to do to use your product, right? Which got hijacked in India. 10 minutes became 15 minutes, and it was okay with everyone. But anyway, so the value promise was 5 minutes or less wait time. And this is what actually got them going really, really quickly, because they actually over-invested on that, which is why they raised billions, because they were paying out to these taxi drivers. Even if they were not doing no rides, they will still get the money, right? So this is what you sometimes have to do to make sure that your customers start using your product. All right. So let's now look at a company which has both software and hardware, right? Because the examples I had so far were all B2C companies, right? And here's a company that I talked about earlier, which is Sigtuple. Sigtuple basically makes a smart microscope, and the idea is that when you do your blood test, the blood gets taken and gets into a diagnostics center, where the whatever chemistry they have to do, they do. The results come, someone looks at the results, counts the number of blood, whatever different parameters they need to do, put it in a report, and someone re-verifies it, and you get your report back. So they said that in India there's an issue because the number of doctors and qualified professionals, which are your pathologists, are not as many as needed, right? And because of that, both the quality of service is not good as well as the price is not standardized. So you basically go to a different diagnostic lab, different price, quality is different. Two different diagnostic centers will give you different readings about cholesterol, whatever else, right? So that's what they said. Let's make it better. Let's take the human error out of the system, and which is what the smart microscope did. So what was their value model? like we discussed, I think the last, it was a performance led, right? Because they're saying I will do a better job than what humans can do. Right? It was tough for them. It took them a long time. Very, very tough journey. So started in 2015, they raised lots of money, but they almost died during COVID, and I'll tell you why. So this is what happened. So that was the problem. The solution was clear. The next part, like we said, you have to go understand the market structure. Actually, you have to do it before, but it actually really plays out when you start doing the value model validation, right? You really understand the intricacies when you actually start doing it. So this is what happens. On the top left is the patient, gives the blood sample, comes to a microscope, you do your analysis, the data gets uploaded, you apply your algorithms, and then you come up with the reports, which is verified by a pathologist, right? And then you send the report back to the patient, right? So then the question becomes, okay, what should we do, right? So they said, let's look at the highest volume requirements in this, which in India is basically, actually maybe across the world, I don't know, I'm guessing, is blood and urine analysis, right? That's the most common test that you get done, right? So that's what they did. After that, they said, oh, this microscope is obviously a hardware. It can analyze anything you put under it. So I can also do retinal scans, right? So they wanted to do ophthalmology next, right? So that's basically the order in which they were going. But the question becomes, when you start doing the value model validation, saying, who will collect the blood samples, right? And who will operate the lab? Because this lab, which has smart microscope, your normal technician does not know how to use it. So who will do that? And where will these pathologists sit? Why would they look at a report which is automated generated and just sign it, right? Or verify and sign it, right? So that becomes a question. You have to ask yourself and answer these questions. So what they said was, in fact, they found some pushback after the initial customer. They had the initial customers, co-creators, who were actually very happy to use it. I forget the name of it's one of the diagnostic companies. Actually, I don't know whether it was Anand Diagnostics or not. I'll have to go and check. But it was one of the well-known diagnostic labs in India, in Bangalore, which actually helped them to create this product. But when they launched it to others, there was very less adoption, right? So then they said, we need to basically figure out this whole structure, right? And you can see that, diagnostic centers and hospitals, that's where the blood gets collected. Typically, hospitals have the in-house labs for blood samples, so it's unlikely that they will give it to you, right? So you need to give your machine to them, right? Now, diagnostic centers have this hub and spoke model. They have a lot of these, centers where they collect the blood. They send all the blood to a central lab. That's where the actual analysis happens and the reports get sent back, right? So that said, okay, maybe we should go after them, right? So these are the kind of questions they started asking, or facing, actually, not asking. This is on the ground when you're actually trying to sell your product, which you have, early version of the product. You have to ask yourself these questions. So do I sell it to a diagnostic center or hospital? Or should we set up our own centralized labs, right? Because if no one's ready to use it, maybe I should set up my own lab, right? Now, should we sell hardware or should we sell the service? Right? That's a fair question. And if we sell the hardware, we'll have to train the technicians. But if so, then how do we train them? Who pays for that? Right? If we have our own labs, then we need to transport the blood. Right? So you have to now do operational setup across cities. Right? And then the question, should we collect blood directly or should we collect blood through partners? Right? Should we have a Orange Health like B2C operations or should we partner with diagnostic centers? Right? So, lot of uncertainty, lot of challenges. Eventually, they set their own diagnostic center. And they said, no one's adopting it. We have to show to the market that this product can deliver value. We will become a diagnostic, lab ourselves. Right? So they set their own thing. They created a company called Humane Diagnostics, and they set up a lab in Bangalore, and there was plan to set up many more. They set up a home pickup for lab tests, so they started doing the blood collections, and they had operations in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, and they also basically started partnering with someone who can then whose products they could resell, because if you already set up a diagnostic center, you need more products also. You set it in your own lab, you start reselling for others also, right? So From a simple solution, one smart microscope, now you've become a full stack doing everything. And then comes COVID-19 and everything gets shut down and there's money running out. So two other co-founders left. They shut down all their plans. Everything was shut down. All of this got rolled back. And they said, we will only make the microscope and we will only sell that to B2B players. So if it takes time for market to adopt and accept, that's fine. We need to find early adopters, let them buy it. Early majority will sell later because you cannot grow too fast. It's a market dynamics. You cannot force market beyond a certain point, right? Which is what they did. They went back and then they had partnerships. Once they went back, I think since they went back and they started improving the product, because then that microscope became the center of the focus again. And then they made sure it was the best in the world. And then they signed up with HCG, Krishna, Thyrocare. They went out of India, so on and so forth. They have, I think, FDA approval also now. So they are in US market also. Right. And this is what shows you the story also, the money that they raised. Right? You can see the valuation here from 5 to 16, 58, 96, down to 15. Right? So it's the story of value model validation. It takes time, effort. 7 years in their case, 2015 to 2020, 5 years in their case. Right? So it takes time. So patience is very important. Being alive is most important. You should not die in this process. Yes.
And then opening their own diagnostic center was not a good idea.
Uh-huh.
Because they were deviating from their core competency.
Yeah.
Their core competency was the product, and when you start a center or something, the core competency is not the reports in fact.
Yeah.
It's a generic thing everybody does.
Yeah.
The core competency is having connection with patients, hospitals, and all. That's a total different ballgame.
Agreed.
It's difficult to scale also.
Agreed. So this is where the activity matrix that we have talked about becomes useful to go back and look at that, right? So you have to ask yourself, why would anyone want to do this, right? Answer to that was that it takes you closer to the revenue flow. So the way the money flows in your industry, you want to get as close to that flow as possible, right? The way you get close to that flow is if you are actually collecting the money, right? Which kind of tempts you to say, let's make our own diagnostic lab, because then I'm collecting the money, right? So whatever margin is, I'm keeping the margin and I'm using my own machines, right? So it's not a slam dunk answer, in other words. So it was useful because it was helping them get closer to the revenue stream. Therefore, the value of the company, and this is why the value of the company was $96 million. Because people also saw that if you're collecting the money, you will be more valuable, right? Then you're becoming booking.com and not a TripAdvisor, which is recommending to people, buy this, you can stay in this hotel, but you're not letting you book the hotel rooms.
So, but I disagree with their thought process.
Okay, go ahead.
The reason is, if you start a diagnostic center, you should not fall in love with the product.
Right.
That's a different thing.
Correct.
Center is we are talking to the customer, because customer don't ask what product you're using.
Agreed.
They ask for.
Exactly. That's correct. And what it does, but by using your own product, which has lower operational overheads, is helping you improve the margin structure. So your operating margin is better, you're more profitable, so therefore you could expand much faster, in principle, right?
But sir, if in diagnostic case,
Uh-huh.
there are a lot of diagnostic that has to be done.
Correct.
Is that product doing all the diagnostics?
That's, I think you market, what you're saying is exactly what eventually they did, and which is what the market told them, so to say. This market is a nebulous term, right? But eventually what happened is exactly what you're saying, right? The uniqueness that they had was in the product they had built, not in the diagnostic center they were creating. And eventually that's where they went back, and eventually that's what helped them succeed, right? Yeah.
So why didn't they go for access? I think I asked this long time. So why not an access strategy? One is because mostly we are importing diagnostic systems. So
Yeah.
there's a tax element attached to it,
Right.
which makes it 2x more expensive.
Correct.
So developing in India by default would have given say people a cost advantage.
Yes.
part is, why was the pathologist needed in the loop? Why not make it completely automated so that you further reduce the cost and kind of get more, like what was the reason the diagnostic companies didn't adopt it?
Okay, so why didn't diagnostic company adopt it? Why didn't they reduce the cost? Because there's a, Make in India.
What was the factor
Right.
that they didn't?
Correct. And why did they need pathologists in the first place anyway, right? So first that is the easiest to answer because the pathologist is a regulatory requirement. So as per Indian regulatory requirement, a pathologist must see the report and then must sign it, right? What you're doing by automating solutions is you're reducing the time that a pathologist take to verify from, let's say, 20 minutes to 2 minutes, right? So you're actually increasing the efficiency of it. So that's the one part. Second part, why didn't they compete by access solution? Because they have a good product, a better product, but at much lower cost because of duty and custom duty and other things. The answer to that is because if you are in the second order business, which is first order is diagnostics lab, which is collecting the money from the user, you are serving as hardware to them. So you are second order business, right? So you have to ask yourself, how large is that business in India? If the business in India is not large enough, the first order and therefore second order is very small, then you can't really make it do it. And I think that's also the reason why they were forced to go towards the primary business, which is running the diagnostic lab themselves. The market size in India was not large enough, right? Which is again, I think helps us to understand why one should not limit oneself to Indian market only. Just because you're starting here doesn't mean you should limit yourself to India. Right? Because India sometimes is not a large market. And then you make suboptimal decisions. So I agree with you. But it was driven because the market size was not large enough just to sell the devices. But if they had taken global view, which is actually requires FDA approval, which is at times uncertain how long will it take, is where these are tough decisions, right? But they took this decision because they had got approval in India, they knew how India operates. So they said, at least if we are in the primary business, we can make a large business. Hindsight, not the right decision. Hindsight, what data tells us is now they're doing better by going back to the roots. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Considering the business ecosystem is improving, I was considering, I thought that these are serial steps. Now, user model validation, PUF. After that, we will go to the product market fit.
Yes.
But they started raising money while they were in this stage.
Correct.
So that means these are all parallel steps.
No, raising money is not dependent on product market fit. So raising money, okay, so the question is user model validation, value model validation, business model validation, right? And how does that correlate with raising capital, right?
And other aspects.
Correct, yeah. So the answer is the investors look at validating the problem. They do not want to validate the solution because solutions will evolve over time. What investors are looking for is this problem worth solving or not? And there are two ways to answer. There are two aspects of answering that question. Number one, is this a large market? And is the market ready? Are there some customers who are willing to adopt a new product that you're offering? And those two get validated at the user model validation stage. So in essence, you can actually start raising money with a concrete evidence with user model validation, which is why I'm suggesting that we should separate out PMF and PUF, because you can actually create a lot of value for yourself and for your investors by separating them out. It's trying to validate business model also at this stage, it just makes everyone's life tough because you're getting pulled in many directions as a entrepreneur, right? And because of that, you're not doing a good job of these three separate things. Right? So that's the reason why one needs to separate.
The separation makes it very difficult to fund this activity.
No. So question, does the separation make it difficult to fund the activity? Answer is,
because building the product is always considered risky, and you want to see these metrics and monthly recurring revenue.
correct.
Kind of things to.
So I would say, does it make it difficult to raise capital when you separate them out? Answer is yes and no. A lot of uninformed investors do look at metrics which are revenue metrics at the early stage. Most experienced investors do not look at them. most experienced investors look at the how large can this become if you have all the building blocks in place. So yes, you will have some investors who will say, oh, where's your revenue? But I think you need to run away from those investors. Those will distort your view by imposing wrong metrics on you. Right, so, all right, Mahadev, if anyone asks question online, just let me know. Okay, so last part, or maybe one part before last part. Just to re-summarize, actually, no, nothing new now. Okay, go ahead. You want me to read or you will read? Or I'll read. Okay, so the question is, when is the right stage for a company to find out early adopters? Should they wait for product to be ready or in the pipeline before finding out early adopters? Okay, so the question, so when is the right time for a company to find early adopters? So actually, before you find early adopters, you have to first do the co-creators, right? So first stage is MUP. At that time, first is to build some early version of your product, find co-creators who are your early customers who are saying, okay, I'll work with you, I'll give you the funders, I'll tell you what really I need, right? You collaborate with them. After you've done that is the time you need to start looking for early adopters. And based on their inputs, you build the MUV plus. So MUV plus is not independent of early adopters. Actually, it is to honor or to cater to the needs of your customers, early adopter customers. Right? But the way you serve them is by coming up with a value promise. So that is your responsibility. Customers will never tell you what the value promise should be. Right? Just tell me if there's any other question. Thank you. Okay, PUF. So the PUF is actually just what we did so far. So once you have validated your user model and you have validated your value model, that's PUF. That's no more, nothing else, right? And what you're really trying to do is to establish that you have enough, or you have some customers who are willing to adopt a new product, and you're proving to yourself and to others that you can deliver value to them in a consistent, ongoing manner, right? Which sets you up for making money, but you're not worrying about money right now. Yes.
I have a question from the previous slide from Sigtuple. So you said they went after the closer to the revenue stream.
Correct.
So why not the concept of profit, where the profit margins are higher? Why specifically revenue? What advantages?
Okay. So there are two concepts. So question is, why did Sigtuple go after revenue? Why didn't they think about profits, right? Profit pools, right? So exactly. So there are two concepts in any markets. There's a profit pool and there's revenue pool, right? So you have to basically pick one of the two, right? And that depends on the company DNA. So if your DNA of the company is that we'll make a performance-led company, then typically you will go after if your DNA of the company is that you want to make a premium company, then typically you'll go after the profit pools, which is an Apple case point, right? If your DNA of the company is a mass market company, you will typically go after profit pools, right? So you basically want to have the maximum possible turnover, and that is what gives you that's the metric everyone looks, and you yourself look for in the business, right? Kind of tells us that they were going after the mass market DNA. That's the kind of company they were trying to build at that time, right? DNAs can change. Two co-founders left, one was left, one left behind. The DNA of that person becomes the most important. Then the DNA of the company can change. All right. Okay, PUF. So let's look at another example of PUF. Pixel, hyperspectral imaging company, sends out satellites. It was started by two Bitsians, Avais and Kshitij. And what they did was they were, at BITS, they participating in competitions for drones, building drones and those kind of things. Drones? I don't know actually drones. Drones was IdeaForge guys. I don't know what these guys are doing. But what they got actually help from actually they were building satellites, yeah. They're building satellites and they got help from ISRO scientists, right? And then they participated in the SpaceX Hyperloop pod challenge, and they were one of the few participants who got invited to LA, to outskirts of LA, to come and demonstrate their thing. And they met Elon Musk. They got kicked, and they said, "Okay, this is it. We will build a satellite company." Right? And then it took them 5 years to, actually they graduated in 2019. It took them a year or so to get the first round of money, which came from a person called Ryan Johnson, who was co-founder of BlackBridge, which actually was in the same field, exactly what they wanted to do. Right? They were a reseller of the data that these guys wanted to start creating. Right? So BlackBridge was a satellite imagery and geospatial solution company, and they were focusing on agriculture, energy, and infrastructure. So they were actually buying images from third-party satellite companies, packaging it and selling it to customers. Right? And when Pixel went to them and saying, "Well, this is what we want to do. We will build our own satellite, we'll put them up there, and we'll get better images than anyone else in the world," Ryan Johnson said, "Perfect. Market needs it, I will give you money." Right? That's your classic angel investor. Right? Doesn't worry about the money. Knows there will be money, is in the field, and therefore supports you. Right? Now these guys said, "Okay, good. We have some validation. We can now actually start building the product because we got some money." Then they started talking to customers. Right? This is not user research. This is a MOU saying, if I put this up if I take this satellite up there and I give you images of this resolution, will you be willing to pay for it? Right? That's what they did. They had agreements with same set of companies actually that BlackRidge had, which is agri, energy, climate, mining, and so on and so forth. Right? And with this, now they got money, they have co-creators, and now they started building the first product, right? Their MUP, right? Which is basically a small satellite which has 150 bands and 10 meter per pixel resolution, which actually was still the best in the world, right? And they first launched Shakuntala, which was for some reason called TD2 and not TD1, which was in April 22, and the TD1, which was actually Anand, launched in November 22. So that's their MUP. As you can see, actually, for deep tech companies, MUP is not a Dropbox video. Right? Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. Right? Software companies have that luxury. Hardware companies actually have to go build the real product. Right? But this was enough for them to actually start raising capital. So to your question, no revenue, only MOUs, only intent, a good product, two satellites up in the sky, beaming back images, still not enough to sell to anyone, but enough to get lots of VCs lining up. Right? Bloom, GrowX, Lightspeed, lots of people came in and put in money. Right? In fact, they came in even before they put up the satellites. Right? So this is what they did. And if you go back and read, this is the blog post that they wrote once they did the sign up. Right? So this is before they did the TD2 first launch. They said, so if you read, we will begin amassing information and uncovering invisible changes. Invisible because hyperspectral imaging is beyond the visible range, right? So, and then we can find the gas leakage, deforestation, melting ice caps, pollution, declining of crop, blah, 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 right? So that's basically what they did, right? And in reality, the MOUs did not convert, right? No one actually paid up, right? People who did pay up were people like Rio Tinto and data farming. Right? And the reason, I think you can guess. Can you guess actually the reason? Why didn't the energy companies and the climate companies pay while Rio Tinto and data farming paid up? Any guesses? Sorry?
Information that you need
Yeah.
available.
No, actually no. So
The data reduces the share price of the oil companies.
actually, so the reason actually they didn't pay is they were not generating more revenue because of this product. The Rio Tintos and data farming were able to generate more money using Pixel's data. Right? So the proximity to revenue is actually always plays out. It is not a theoretical thing. It is always consistently plays out. The climate guys, the leakage guys is infrequent exercise. Leakage doesn't happen every day. It's almost like an insurance policy, right? And as we know, insurance policies have less penetration because, unless it's a regulatory requirement, people don't want to do it, right? Melting ice caps, not much money to be made, right? It's good for Earth, but no money in that. Therefore, those businesses take longer to shape up or never shape up. Yeah. So proximity to money is very important. MUP plus. So Pixel at this time decided saying, okay, we could do two things. We could either send the bandwidth or on our satellites to different people, so they can get the images that they want, or we can actually start building our own analytics platform on top of it and never sell raw images and sell only, the analytics reports, which is what they did, which is, I think, is a brilliant thing, right? If you can process and create more value, you sell that, not the raw data, right? Which is what they did, which is what, now they have, they're one of the very few, if not the only company right now, which can give you hyperspectral imaging. So everyone is lining up to sign up with them. One of the fastest growing startups in India, very, very profitable. Actually, profitable for investors. The share prices or the valuation of the company is zooming. Yeah.
Two comments here. So, one is about this agri-tech.
Yeah.
So, agri-tech does not necessarily need hyperspectral imaging. Like, you can do as good with electro-optics, which is very easily available.
Utna mujhe technically I don't know.
Because, and second is about mining. Like, even in mining,
Uh-huh.
your SAR data would be better. SAR is the synthetic aperture radar. So,
Okay, it's becoming too technical, so I will not be able to answer that at all.
like even it is early days, and I doubt whether even the adopters have paid sufficient money. Like it has, because the revenue figures are not. In fact, we selected this company for our assignment.
Oh, you're the ISRO guy. Okay. All right. Okay, got it. So I think, yeah, I see these things eventually market will not pay you unless there's value. So there's a direct ROI correlation here. So if there are people lining up to sign up, I'm going to give them a benefit of doubt and let them, prove it to the world. But you are with your technical expertise might know more. I don't know. So I'll just park that question. So, but if you want, we can go meet Pixel guys. Happy to. But it should be constructive critique. But anyway, coming back, they recently launched the Fireflies. 6 of them went up. 12 more will go next year, and they are actually improving. They want to have the heavier satellites, I think, a year down the road. So company seems to be doing okay. But bottom line, it is important to make your startups in small steps. First, user model definition, value model definition, business model definition, then user model validation, value model validation, then business model validation. Right? Small steps, is the only way to do it. There is some dependency between these steps, so it's not always linear. So you might have to go back and forth, right? So, but that's part of the game. So now let me tell you why I've been insisting or emphasizing that at PUF you should not do monetization. Right? And the reason for this is using this graph. This is what actually a person called Stephen Forth has written a very good book on monetization pricing. This is actually from his book. So what he's found was that the innovators don't prefer to pay. They don't want to pay. They are happy to talk about your product, but they will not pay. The early adopters will pay for competitive advantage. So as long as they can do better than others and they can measure that, they will pay you. The early majority is willing to pay what others are willing to pay. Right? So these are the guys now who are now copycats, right? So the late majority does not pay, but unless they have done a detailed analysis. In fact, they depend on these guys to tell them that this is worth paying for, right? So late majority depends on early majority. And laggards don't pay ever, and therefore the only way to make money from them is to bundle your product, right? So if you bundle everything and you sell it to them, that's when you can make money. There's lots of money to be made on the right-hand side. I'm not saying there's no money to be made. In fact, there's more money made after the chasm than before, obviously, right, as it can say. So it is not to say the money cannot be made. The way you make money is different. And importantly, you cannot make too much money from innovators, co-creators, or early adopters, right? So therefore, do not try to monetize them too much. They will not pay you. It's a losing battle. Sorry, it's a person called Stephen Forth. I don't know the name. I don't remember. Huh? No, Crossing the Chasm is Jeffrey Moore. Yeah, this is a different book. It's a pricing book on pricing and business models. Yeah, no, pricing and monetization, not business models. Yeah.
This is the diffusion of innovation thing, and then this Jeffrey Moore and
The gray things are Stephen Forth's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this curve is diffusion of innovation. Actually, it's got started before Jeffrey Moore. It's got started in 1968, and Jeffrey Moore actually just packaged it better and sold it better. So he was a good marketing guy, as he wrote a marketing book. That's why everyone knows it by that his, but actually it was done by someone else. So, Evert, yes, exactly. Yeah. So it was Evert who actually started it, who first came up with the innovation diffusion. But anyway, we all know it as Jeffrey Moore's thing. Okay, so don't do that. Please don't worry. Don't monetize it. Defer to a later stage. Yeah.
How do we know that the customers are serious if we don't ask for money?
So they will, innovators, co-creators will pay you with their feedback. They'll pay you by collaborating with you and using your product and say, do these things. The early adopters will pay you by talking about your product to everyone they know, right? You want to make money there. So it is pay for competitive advantage. So you want to make money from your early adopters, but you don't want to hold yourself to such a high standard to say, I should become profitable with the help of these guys. So your business model validation, which requires you to prove that you can become profitable, or at least have a directionality or the path to profitability, cannot be established by working with the early adopters. So you don't want to charge them, but you want to charge them less, and you want to monetize their engagement in other ways.
So won't the other people, the early majority, compare the price? Won't this set the base price of the product itself?
So won't the early majority anchor their pricing on what the early adopters are paying? No, answer is no, because what happens is over time, first of all, early adopters, co-creators are using your product which are not even ready. They are helping you create the product. Early adopters are using a product which are unpolished, incomplete. They're giving you feedback, right? It's still giving them competitive advantage, but it's not a fully polished product. So they are happy, they're okay living with occasional failures. By the time you reach early majority, your product has become well polished. So therefore, asking for more money is not that tough. And if you want, you can, this is a concept called grandfathering prices. So you don't want to change prices on people, right? So what that means is, if you offer some price, you can't saying, sorry, that price changed, now everyone has to move to a new price point. People do that, so it's not like can't be done, but it's not recommended. So the way you do that is you say base price is that, but value added price is this. So you package it properly, and therefore there are ways to make money. Yes.
Generally, there are some kind of like in early adoption, there are some if you're getting it for free, let's try it out. Right? You don't need as such, but okay. Something free is available.
Yes.
Are they also valuable?
So your question is, if there are customers who are okay to try a free product, is it useful to work with them?
Yeah.
I think answer is only if they are co-creators or early adopters. So you have to go back.
That category only.
I think it's fine. You have to go back and ask them yourself this question, saying, are they in this 2x2 matrix or not? Abhi kitna bacha hai? Oof. Okay, whatever. I think you know what I'm talking about. This one. All right. So you want to actually ask yourself seriously this question: are they really early adopters or co-creators or not? If they are, it's okay to give it for free, almost free, or free. Yeah, it's fine. To give you example, CleverTap, one of Axel portfolio companies, work with Book My Show, which is the movie ticketing company, for pittance, because it was Book My Show which said, if you can segment my users so that I can send them a message on, within, let's say, 2-hour window, right? Then I will be, it will be very useful, and here are the scenarios where I would, need that product, and here's how I would use it. So that specific requirement, clarity of what market needs came from Book My Show, right? And CleverTap actually built the product, keeping that in mind and offering it to them. They did not even go back to them and say, give me more money, right? Eventually they did, because the volume started crossing a certain threshold, and you can do a price based on how many messages you're sending. So that got them to some revenue, but you don't. Yeah. So it's okay actually to, once you know that there is a legit early adopter or co-creator, it's okay to actually subsidize them, so to say. All right. So what I'll do is I'll skip the last part, as in I'll cover it in the next session, and we'll basically close the session now. Yeah, I was going to talk about GTM today, but I think GTM actually fits better with the business model, because it's a cost of customer acquisition, and we are at 3:30, so I'll skip it now. I'll cover it next time. So if you have any questions, let me know. Anyone else? Anything online? No? All right, cool.
How do we scale up our business to outside the country?
How should we scale up business to outside India is one of the GTM questions that I had. Okay, well, let me try to answer. How do you scale up your customer outside India? So it's actually a GTM question. So first point was exactly that, India or India or global. So I think first and foremost, you have to ask yourself, is India a large enough market or not? If India is not a large enough market, then clearly it has to be a global business, number one. Number two, you have to ask yourself, which is user model validation question, is Indian market ready for adopt this product or not? If Indian market is not ready, then we must find a way to go to global markets, because actually no, you have to then ask yourself, is global market, a specific market, let's say US market, ready for this product or not? If yes, then you must find a way to go to US market. Then comes a question, but therefore it means more money is needed, right? Then we go back saying, okay, but can I validate my users, and can I validate my value model without spending that much money, right? So therefore now you have to play this delicate game of validating the users and the user model and value model in India by clearly keeping in mind that eventually you need to address the US market. So the kind of customers you acquire in India, the kind of value proposition you offer them, you have to eventually be clear that you want to go target the US market, right? So sometimes you might have to, I think we were just talking about that earlier. So I'll use your example, Ruben. So let's say you are building a product which is for oral cancer screening, and you see that in India, a lot of people who get oral cancer is because they are chewing tobacco, while in US market, the people who get oral cancer, they get because, let's say, smoking or because of drinking alcohol. Then you want to make sure that chewing tobacco customers, you don't target too much in India, because they don't have a corresponding user base there, right? So therefore, when you go in India to validate a user model, value model, you will look after only the smoking users and drinking users, not the chewing tobacco users. So that's how you will have to do it. It has implication on price, but once you validate your user model and value model, then you can go to your investors and ask them for money. So, yes.
For a mid-tech startups, how many co-creators, user or hospitals, should we collaborate with?
For a medtech startups, how many co-creators or early adopters that you need to collaborate with? Okay. So for a medtech startup, or actually for any startup, 2 or 3 is actually 2 co-creators is good enough. 1 is also okay if that 1 co-creator is a representative co-creator. How many early adopters you want? This was what I was going to talk. So in order of 10, 5 to 10 customers you want. What you want to make sure is these early adopters are not only through references. Because see, what happens is when you get through references, they trust you more than they trust the product, and therefore they start working with you. But if you are able to close a few which are non-warm introductions, cold connects, then you know that they're acquiring or they're buying your product only for the product itself. So the value model can get validated faster. So 5 to 10 is enough for the early adopters. 1 or 2 for co-creator, 5 to 10 for early adopter. Users or hospitals, okay. So I have answered the question for hospitals. How many customers and how many customers should the customers get, or how many clients, or whatever, should your customers get? Actually, so that will depend on how many instances you need to prove that you're able to deliver value to your customers. Right? So if your value to your customer is through your hospital is a partner, so to say, to deliver value to the end customer, then you want to have enough so that you can prove to yourself that you're able to deliver value consistently. So it is a case-by-case scenario. All right? Okay, that's it for today.
The revenue proximity question and medical devices.
Okay.
I think as a medical device manufacturer or company, you never have that revenue proximity. There will always be a doctor or hospital studying.
Right.
Is there any models to bypass that?
So revenue proximity.
The customer, but still enabled by.
Yeah. So the question is, for medtech products, is revenue proximity ever possible, or is there any way to bypass the partner, right? I think we saw Sigtuple trying to do that, right? They've tried to bypass, or they want to.
No, I mean that would be like they tried to become the.
They became the hospital. They became the service provider, right? So I mean that's the only way. Maybe not the only way. You have to ask yourself a question. It depends on your specific problem, right? If there's a lot of user demand for that particular product, which they can screen themselves or self-medicate themselves, then there might be a scenario for it. So a case in point would be, let's say, glucose monitoring, patch, right? So your partner in this case would be a hospital or some such caregiver who prescribes that, but you can target the users themselves, because at times when the market is aware that let's say pre-diabetic people can have more complications, and they know that there are risks with them, so they might be amenable to buy off the shelf, right? But there are regulatory issues. Is it allowed, not allowed, all of that. But in such cases, you can actually bypass them. Right? So it's possibility, but I think you have to look at, for that you have to actually understand how your market is evolving, and is it at that point where direct to consumer is possible or not.
Also, this insurance issue comes in depending on the market like US.
Exactly. Especially US market, if you're going after, then insurance plays a critical role. How much is reimbursable, not reimbursable, what kind of products, a lot of those issues. Indian market much easier because 65% out of pocket. So you can launch a product, people anyway pay for it, so they might adopt it. So, yeah. All right, thank you very much. So what we'll do next time, we'll cover GTM a little bit more, but in the context of business model.